Hey there, this is Angie with Angie's Beyond the Lecture, and today's video is going to cover a particular exam question I saw. It's regarding Hess's law, and it's basically one, it came up because a problem I put out on the community tab was incorrect, and someone caught it and I corrected it. And I wanted to show that sometimes these things happen and things to look for so you don't spin your wheels on a test question. These things do come up where a professor may put out something in a test. You know, they have tons of questions out there and they might grab the wrong question from a test bank that just doesn't fit. So I'll be right back. I'll go ahead and pull up the question. We'll talk about it real quick, and we'll discuss a few more things on how to deal with that when you see it. Okay, I'll be right back. Question 36 and 37 on this particular exam. This was in Chemistry 1, and Hess's law is typically what we see in thermochemistry, thermodynamics. We're working with heats of a reaction. So how much energy does an energy need to take in order to be achieved, or how much does it release when the reaction is completed? So this is generally what we're talking about here. Now, you'll notice two questions, of course. 36 is where we had the problem. 37 is an additional Hess's law problem. Things seem to work out here fine. You'll notice I had to manipulate 4 separate equations in order to get to this particular goal equation right here. So the goal is that you basically add all of these reactions together. You might have to manipulate, meaning you might have to multiply quantities or flip, basically flip or reverse the reactions, and then basically add these heats of reactions over here. And then you get the overall heat of the reaction. So a lot of times what happens is scientists don't know the overall heat of one reaction, but they can break it up into tiny steps. And if they know that their heats needed for those individual steps, then they know they can add them together and get that end quantity. Now, just for reference, I'm not going to go into huge detail on this, but for reference, an exothermic is negative, so that means heat is given off, and then an endothermic reaction is heat needs to be taken in for that reaction to take place. And you'll notice on all of these, we have negative. But if you do happen to have to flip the reaction, then you flip the sign, okay? So you'll notice, and I'll move on here quickly, you'll notice on these two right here, I reversed them. So that means I had to make them from negative to positive. All right, so back to question 36. I want to discuss the actual question itself, and then you'll see it sort of rapidly deteriorates. And you can see why I put a question mark there next to B, because I think I picked that based on it was the quantity closest to what I got. But you'll see in the end that you cannot obtain this final goal equation. So reading the question, they want to know, using Hess's law, calculate delta H in terms of kilojoules for the decomposition of hydrogen peroxide, and they list the standard enthalpy of reaction data. What they're saying is we broke this down into individual reactions, and you need to add or subtract, multiply, manipulate those numbers to come up with the final delta H for the reaction. Now, notice they want to decompose hydrogen peroxide, whereas they're listing 2 molecules of water. Okay, so that probably should have been a red flag for me when I read this. I can honestly say I do. This was quite a while back. I do remember this problem. I do remember the professor having this conversation with us when she was handing tests back that, sorry, 36 didn't have a valid answer. And if you dig a little bit further, and this is just, simply an exercise of what these problems should look like, but in the end, you can't get the goal equation. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking to get this final reaction. And when you can't get that's a problem. So you'll notice that I made notes that I put REV to reverse that particular reaction. So I went ahead and I did note it here next to that blue mark. So I'm just going to rewrite it just for clarity. I'll put the states that matter as well. We have 2 hydrogen molecules with an oxygen. Whoa, not sure what that was. Okay. And I doubled that second equation. So 2H2 gas plus 2O2 gas. And I did this problem. This is probably the 3rd or 4th time I've done this problem because I just wasn't able to get it to work out either. So in addition to that goal equation not being really valid, there was a problem actually obtaining that. So when we add everything together, I'm going to kind of get into the question 37 area. But when we add everything together, we have 2 molecules of water plus 2 hydrogen gas molecules, and we have 2 oxygens. Okay, so I'm literally just grouping everything together on the reactant side, additively, and then I'll put peroxide first, plus the 2 hydrogens, plus the O2 gas. All right, and then we can cancel common species here. These 2 guys can go away, and then this guy can go away, and that would just leave 1. So if we have 2 on the left and 1 on the right, we can cancel 1 on both sides, but there's still 1 remaining on the left. Now, that's all I can really do. And you'll notice the resulting reaction okay, we're just left with the hydrogen peroxide on the right. And I apologize, there are two. All right, so we're left with 2 waters and an oxygen breaking down into 2 hydrogen peroxides. Now, I have a feeling perhaps this needs to be over here. Yeah, so that was, yeah, it's a dead end. This particular question is a dead end. Clearly, for one, I remember this question. When I went back, I had erased everything and I stopped right there. The teacher was pretty good at reviewing our work. Even though it's a multiple choice question, she did review the work for partial credit. So I think I just left that there, put a question mark. And being that this was an accelerated course, I recall we had, I think, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to take the exam. So our college was open 7 days a week. We would have a certain amount of time to take our exam at the end of the week, and then she would have them graded probably by Monday or Tuesday. So she probably picked up right away that this particular problem had a problem. And on that note, I'll just simply transition over to when you see problems like this, do speak up. So the person that notified me, of course, had a obviously legitimate reason. And if I ever see anything on my problems, I will definitely take a look and make sure that something is corrected. My issue was I just didn't have a word in there. The students are supposed to say or determine which option does not belong in a group of options. And I simply didn't have that not. It was just a single word I missed. And things like that happen. Fortunately, these are not high stakes on these are simply supplemental practice that I put out on YouTube community channel. And of course, I will definitely, I think what I've been doing lately, this week, I really put in more time and effort into putting out problems, and I was just cranking them out without systematically going back at regular intervals and making sure that the problems looked correct, like, doing a second edit or multiple edits, right? I edit it before it goes out, but doing a final edit as it's presented on YouTube. So I will definitely ensure that I do that to catch any little mistakes that might go out. And because I realize how frustrating that can be when you look at a problem, go, hey, there's I don't see a valid option here. So thank you to the user. I gave that person credit yesterday on a post. And of course, I wanted to also share a couple of different times because they do happen. Um, Professors make mistakes too, right? They have advanced degrees and they've had plenty of time in the field, though. They can miss certain things that go out. And of course, again, like I said, this professor just simply took this problem off the exam. Now, I will say, in my college tenure, aside from this one sticking out, this was at Collin College. When I was at the University of Texas, I was taking a psych statistics class. And at the end of the course, the professor had agreed to drop a quiz grade. And I think I had a wedding that year, that summer. I had missed some classes, I'd missed a quiz. So I was counting on that, one missed quiz to be dropped. And the professor, I think what had happened is I was expecting a certain grade based on the calculations on the website. I think we used Blackboard or Canvas at the time, and I was expecting an A minus in the course. I was like, yeah, I got an A minus. And I get to the final grade posting, and it was a B plus. And I was like, oh no, what happened? Like, did something go wrong? And I went back and I calculated that I think the professor dropped those final scores, but then they didn't drop the quantity of quizzes in that average, right? So if you have, for instance, 10 quizzes, you drop a quiz grade, you should be dividing the average by 9. And I caught that. It was something similar to that. And at least I thought I caught it. And I went in and I talked to her and I said, hey, can you, there's just a discrepancy in what I think I should have versus what the final grade was reported as. And sure enough, she's like, yeah. And I showed her my thoughts and she's like, oh, let me take a look at the spreadsheet. So she had a spreadsheet with calculations and she confirmed that, yes, indeed, she was dividing out by the wrong number of quizzes, and that got corrected right away. And I even went back. I wasn't expecting this, but I got an actual A. So expecting an A minus, got an A. Maybe she gave me bonus points for coming forward. I don't know. I didn't ask after that, but I think it's definitely worth asking about either grades that you don't agree with your calculations or quiz and tests. This was an exam. This was, definitely higher stakes. And I don't know at that time if I would have had the wherewithal to go to the teacher. I might have. This again was a compacted course to where we were so busy. I might not have remembered, being so busy. It was an accelerated course. But I just wanted to discuss that. I think there was one other adventure I had with an exam question. I think it was biochemistry too. And I don't think that at the time I went to look over my test scores in the professor's office hours. You can actually go in and look at the exam. And I think I brought it up, and his mood was not in the mood to talk about it. So I let it go that particular time. I didn't think it was a question worth pursuing. It was a much simpler multiple choice question that, in my mind, I thought his notes said one thing, and I got the question wrong. And I even recall talking to a fellow student. He's like, "Yeah, I got the same answer too." And I asked him about it, and he didn't want to talk about it. I didn't pursue it. Probably was my mistake, again. But thank you very, very much for watching this. And hopefully this is helpful when it comes to Hess's law. So Hess's law is something you'll see in Chemistry 1 about mid-semester or so, and with your thermodynamics and thermochemistry type stuff. And again, like and subscribe if you don't want to see more videos and content on my YouTube channel. And of course, hit my website if you'd like to talk to me about tutoring, or even, just talk to me. I give half hour free consultations if you want some guidance on what to do with chemistry. If you decide to go with me as a tutor, great. If not, that's okay too. So anyway, make it a great day, and thanks again.